We definitely want to hear from you during the class. So feel free to raise your hand and make comment, have a conversation with the speaker and myself. We love that. The first part of our presentation for ecological herbalism will be presented by our guest speaker, Jocelyn Perez-Blanco, and she has just entered the room. Hi, Jocelyn.
Hello, 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 hello.
Yes,
All
nice
right,
seeing you. Mm-hmm.
here we go.
Yeah, so I see someone else is entering and I will admit them as soon as, well, I think they've been admitted. So as soon as they bring their audio in and video, we'll welcome them. I want to tell the people what ecological herbalism is, Jocelyn.
Uh-huh.
It helps us understand where we live and learn about the plants around us. It is an interdisciplinary approach to the herbal practice that includes learning about the natural processes unfolding in wild areas and how plant communities interact with each other and their environment. Some of the glossary surrounding it is deforestation, which is the purposeful clearing of forested land, and forestation, which includes forest restoration, reforestation, and afforestation, which is a process where new forests are planted across land without trees. And it's the process of restoring damaged forests or growing forests on currently unforested land. Reforestation includes planting trees or allowing trees to regrow on land that had recently been covered with forest. The rainforest is what we're going to talk about. And some of the things that are found in the rainforest that help us in the medical field and in the herb world. Some of the compounds in rainforest plants are used to treat malaria, heart disease, bronchitis, hypertension, rheumatism, diabetes, muscle tension, arthritis, glaucoma, dysentery, and tuberculosis, among other health problems. So the bark of white willow contains salicin, which is a chemical similar to aspirin. In combination with the herb's powerful anti-inflammatory plant compounds called flavonoids, salicin is thought to be responsible for the pain-relieving and anti-inflammatory effects of the herb. Now, did you know that approximately 7,000 medicinal compounds prescribed by Western doctors are derived from plants? 70% of the 3,000 plants identified by the United States National Cancer Institute have potential anti-cancer properties, and they're found in the rainforest. The World Health Organization reports that 80% of people in developing countries still rely on traditional medicine for their health needs. So as these spaces are depleted, they're keeping the people from treating themselves. Indigenous people rely on shaman, herbal healers, and rainforest plants. So these communities are left without their rich resources. And by the way, the photographs are from the Botanical Garden, the New York Botanical Garden in the Bronx, which I recently visited. Beautiful rainforest display there. And I just want to offer you some opportunities to explore plants. And Jocelyn will tell you about more places later. But the places that I've certainly enjoyed are Brooklyn Botanic Garden, Queens Botanic Garden, New York Botanical Garden, Mutter Museum in Philly. They have a wonderful herb garden there. National Geographic Magazine. It's a wonderful magazine to subscribe to, as is Mother Earth Living Magazine, where I've been invited to be a writer, and American Museum of Natural History, United States Botanic Garden in Washington, and of course, Honolulu Botanical Gardens. That brings us to our topic of ecological herbalism. And we're happy to welcome our guest, Jocelyn Perez-Blanco, Herban Garden founder. this is something that fascinates me about Jocelyn is her love for animals and his animal life. And I put some photos up so she could share some cute little stories about her little loved ones. Jocelyn, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, we have quite a menagerie at home here. Both a myriad of plants as well as wildlife. So we do have, that's our little chameleon. He's a piebald chameleon. So which means that he has a mutation in which part of his, like, different spots on his skin don't produce melanin.
Oh.
So um so it's kind of like a weird albinism type of mutation. So he has his green areas and then he has just completely white areas.
Mm-hmm.
He's a beautiful little guy.
Yeah.
And then we do have our cats now. They're all rescue failures, foster failures. So they were all rescues in which took them on and then couldn't couldn't give them up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you end up with 4 cats. That's so my husband and I put a cap on it. We do not foster any more cats because we know how it ends, and
Yeah, yeah. So
we're at
that's
we're at
Mozart.
capacity.
Yeah, Mozart, Lexi, Maple, and Jules. So what are their full names again? We were talking about.
Yes. Yeah, so I'll go clockwise. So the cat with the stripes that's laying on the couch, that's Jules Verne after the author, and then Maple Hemingway. And Hemingway won after the author, but also Maple, he's a polydactyl. He actually has 6 toes
Mm.
on each of his feet, and so that they're typically called Hemingway cats. So there
Oh.
was a reason for that little name there. And
Uh-huh.
then Lexi Angelou. Oh, sorry, my phone. Lexi Angelou
Mm-hmm.
is our female. She was the last one to join our little pride here, and um, and she came from a home where she wasn't socialized, and so it
Okay.
took many years for her to build up trust, and she's great. And then Mozart, and so his name is Amadeus Mozart after the composer. And he had probably the roughest story out of all of them. He was actually thrown in the trash
Mm.
as a just like he was only like 2 weeks old with his brother, and they taped him up in a box and threw him in the trash. And luckily, a man walking his dog, the dog kind of got wanted to mess with the box, and the guy
Yes.
heard the meows, and
Oh.
and I was at the front desk at the rescue I was volunteering at, so I did the intake, and I took them home. I was like,
Oh, that's so
and then
wonderful.
I couldn't give up Mozart. So he's a mama's boy.
Yes, and
Um,
that's a paradox because a dog was their angel.
yes, exactly.
Yes.
Oh no, absolutely. So he wouldn't be with us if that dog, hadn't been so persistent with wanting to get into that box. So
Very
we're very
nice.
thankful for that, though. Oh
And
yeah.
there we have Venom, my favorite. Tell us about Venom. Now, what I researched, because I
Uh-huh.
was so interested in this, is that the rose hair tarantula is known for being one of the most docile tarantulas. However, they're aggressive toward each other, and the
Absolutely.
females will fight if left in the same enclosure, and females will also eventually eat the males if left too long together.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Venom was a childhood pet. So when I was a teenager, my brother and I got really, really into my younger brother. We got really into tarantulas,
Wow.
and Venom was our very first tarantula.
Hmm.
And we got her as when they're called slings when they're babies. They call them slings.
Mm-hmm.
So we got her as a sling, and she grew up. And it was actually my brother who took this photo. I was about 16 in this photo, um, and so we were just talking, and she had climbed onto my chest, and They're very so. While people might assume that they jump, right? There's actually terrestrial tarantulas and arboreal tarantulas, and she's a terrestrial species. So she could actually really harm herself if she were to fall from an elevated height. So
Oh,
I was sitting on the floor, but I didn't want to risk her falling. So I kind of laid down with her on my chest and I kept talking to my brother, and she climbed up onto my face, which is when he
and he
decided
had a
he took
camera
that.
handy.
It was a perfect, and he took that picture. There's a couple different pictures of you see kind of her climbing, but this
Wow.
is my favorite picture of
This
her.
is
But
the
she's
most dramatic one.
yeah, but she's great. You definitely learn after years and years of working with them. We have three of them. She's our oldest. Our others are about a decade.
Mhm.
They're also female rose hairs as well.
Mhm.
And you learn their personalities. You learn when they're not in the mood to be touched.
Mm.
They're
Mm.
very they're very their body language is very easy to read once you know what to look for.
Well, what do
Um,
you look for in a spider
yeah,
when they don't want to be touched? I imagine they
yes.
back up.
Yes. Well, one, they will back up. They also do a pose, like a threatened pose or an aggressive stance, where they will pick up their front legs like this and display their fangs. They'll actually take out their, because their
What?
fangs hook up, so they kind
Mhm.
of put them out, and then they lift themselves up like this. The first like couple feet, um, and they will do that. But one thing too is that they prefer to run away, than to try to
Mm.
attack. Attacking is like their last last ditch effort.
So then
So
that's Hollywood. Then the attack part is their Hollywood.
no, no, absolutely not. And these guys are very known for kicking hair. And so what they do is that they have the hairs on their abdomen are called urticating hairs. So
Mhm.
very itchy. So if it
Oh,
probably sounds familiar, urtica like nettles, or it's urticaria.
yeah.
But it's that same idea it's the same root word that it means agitating.
Mm.
And so their hairs, they kick them with their back legs. They
Yes.
literally just go like this and shoot the hairs, and then you start to get really itchy. So
Really?
yes, and so if you start to see that they start kicking, oh, it's stressed. It's not in the mood today. I'm not going to mess with it.
And I don't
Um,
want to itch.
Exactly. You don't want to itch. Some people are more sensitive than others.
Mhm.
And one great way too to figure out if they're in the mood to be handled, because I used to use venom as an animal ambassador pre-COVID, for schools and for like community events, to kind of introduce children especially to these, and even using a paintbrush. And by touching the abdomen, you can kind of tell, like, is it moving away? Is it letting me pet it? If it's kind of letting me pet it and it's not reacting, it means it's good to
Oh,
go.
it's safe to move forward.
Yeah. So, but she's been with us for such a long time, and I had a professor who had his Mexican red leg tarantula for, it was like 23, 24 years old when I had
Mm.
his class. So I know they can live, a while. So I'm hoping she has many more years with us.
Yes, I hope so too, because the more I look at her, the more I love her. Now, if I were to be in the same space, it would take a minute. You would have to socialize me and
Yeah.
acclimate me to the situation, but I don't know. It could happen, Jocelyn. I don't know.
No,
But but
absolutely.
in the meantime, tell Venom I said hi.
I will, absolutely.
Jocelyn has a background in biology, animal husbandry, as you can see, and agriculture. She is an educator, an herbalist, an urban naturalist, flower essence therapist, conservationist, and a gardener. She also offers free or low cost interactive webinars and outdoor activities where she helps students explore the many facets of plant identification, horticulture, herbalism, ethnobotany, phytochemistry, and ecosystem management. Now, I'm going to tell you, plant identification, horticulture, I want to really delve into that more and more, especially the naming, getting used to the names, the
Oh,
Latin.
yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Jocelyn is also the organizer for Herbalist Meetup Group of New York, currently serves as the secretary on the Herbalists Without Borders Board of Directors and coordinator of the New York City Queens chapter. She's a member of the American Herbalist Guild Equity, and that's how I actually ended up coming in contact with her by way of Laura Rubin, another wonderful herbalist, and Inclusion Advisory Committee, as well as their New York City chapter. She's an educator and guide with New York City H2O, and as citizen pruner with Trees New York, a super steward for New York City parks, and she participates in street tree care, trail maintenance, invasive plant removal, and reforestation projects. I am really so happy to have you here. And please tell us, before we get started, about your newest appointments.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So very recently, I've been appointed the new assistant director for Herbalists Without Borders. And I was also just voted into the governing council, the American Herbalist Guild Board of Directors. So really excited. So thank you.
Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you. So it's I'm super, super excited. I'm
yes, we're all
beyond
excited.
tickled. So
yes. And we're looking for we know you're the type of person to pay it forward. So we're looking for the knowledge that you have to share with us. So as I've told you before, she's the founder of Herban Garden. And I now turn the mic over to you, Jocelyn. Thank you for coming.
No, of course. Thank you. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Let me give you.
Yes, the host privileges. Yes.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
There we go. All right. Hello, 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 everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
So, I wanted definitely to even show you, this was a great photo a student took of me showing a piece of garlic mustard. It was a garlic mustard leaf. I absolutely adore this photo. So I definitely had to use it. Right? I always get, so I'm a habitual nail breaker, nail biter for many years. And after I started using calcium treatments, I always keep my nails done up, and especially because I work so much in the field, I'm constantly, doing things that could potentially harm my nails. So I always get them done because this offers like another layer of protection, so they don't break as easily. And it's hilarious because I always get my students, they're like, your nails, you got a manicure. Why are you like all up in the dirt? I'm like, that's how you do it. You can do both. You can totally do both. So I always get a laugh when students realize that, they're like, you have a manicure. I'm like, yeah. You can do it too. Totally. Don't worry about it.
Yes.
Now, of course, Carolyn, you did a wonderful job of giving a little background on my work. I definitely just wanted to share a little bit about a lot associations, affiliations I have, really in regards to my environmental work, and definitely with just showcasing a few of the great organizations that I have the privilege to work with in some capacity, either in leadership roles, as a core volunteer, or even some partnerships. I just recently partnered up with the Natural Areas Conservancy, and I'll be leading my first walk with them later in the month. So really excited about that. And I've been doing a lot of their trail maintainer training, and I just completed it last week. So I am now the new corridor keeper for the Yellow Trail in Forest Park in Queens.
Nice.
Yeah, so excited. It's a lot of work, but super excited to get started. So I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to a bunch of these great organizations that have helped me get here.
That's so wonderful.
So yes. throwing that in there for just a second. And yes, and as you mentioned, I do different types of programming, all ages. I do programming for young children. Um, I've done classes for children as young as 18 months. So
Really?
yeah, so doing kind of even just like nature play, so making mud pies and leaves and um, different activities like leaf pressing, using herbs that are different colors and scents. We do a lot of sensory play, like with cinnamon and things that the kids could really play with. And we made our own we make our own Play-Doh out of like cornstarch, so it's all natural ingredients, and the kids can use different herbs, powdered turmeric, powdered cinnamon, to make their little Play-Doh figurines smell good or be different colors, and it's all plant materials. So,
Well, I'm definitely going to turn my great grandson over to you. He's 4. He would love it.
oh, wonderful! Yeah, no, absolutely. The more the merrier. It's great. It's so much fun. It's a great way to introduce kids to the wondrous world of plants.
That's right.
Um, and I also do programming for school age children as well, high schools, and even continuing education. So our demographic is huge. It's wide, um, and I love being able to meet so many different people from so many different backgrounds. Um, and so the big question here, right, is, so what is ecological herbalism? How does herbalism and environmentalism intersect? And um, while it might seem very obvious to some folks might not see the correlation. Um, and I wanted to definitely talk a little bit more about that. So, what's currently going on in our planet, it's you know it's very devastating for our plants. They have so much to face. uh this is not an exhaustive list by any means. This is just a few of the examples of different threats to our wildlife, and especially our medicinals.
Mhm.
Anything from habitat destruction. This is just an actual photo of it's a much larger photo. I just cropped it, but this is the Cerrado region in
Mhm.
the Amazon basin, and this is as a result of deforestation for cattle farming. Um, Absolutely devastating. Just these swaths of just areas that are just completely cleared of any vegetation.
Mhm.
Um, so plants are dealing with the destruction of their habitats, and also clear cutting, just completely defoliating all the plants there, removing them. That disturbance to the soil, that messes with erosion, and it causes a cascading list of issues. Also over harvesting, so a lot of folks don't really think about where their herbs come from. It's sometimes there's this detachment, where you almost feel like, oh, it's just I go to the store and I get it off the shelf, right?
Right.
Um, so there's this like level of dissociation that tends to happen, and folks don't really think about, well, what path did that herb travel to get to you? Um, and sometimes the ways that they're harvested aren't the most ethical,
Mm.
either by the workforce, that is being used. Or sometimes the employees are barely being paid, and it's also the methods in which they're being over harvested. There is a wonderful talk offered by the Sustainable Herbs Program by the American Botanical Council
Mhm.
on the changing plants of the Himalayan region. And one great example of over harvesting and how that's actually changing the plant's ecology is with snow lotuses. So snow lotuses are highly prized medicinal, and they when you would see them before, they were these beautiful, large, really dramatic flower, but they're very slow growing. And there were actually harvesters being dropped off in droves, in like
Wow.
truckloads of people would go and grab every snow lotus that they saw that was nice and big and beautiful. And now when you go to the
Mm.
region, you still find snow lotuses, but
Yes.
they're much smaller because the folks overlooked the tinier ones. And so now that has become the majority species in that region. So it's harder now to find the big ones because all these harvesters took all the big ones, and they kind of weeded that out of the biodiversity, sphere there. And so now the plants that are reproducing are all tiny.
And
So
snow
even
lotus is good for.
Yeah, so snow lotus, I believe it's used. Um, uh, it's like a tonic. I think it has antiviral, antiseptic properties, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't used it in my own practice.
Sounds, yeah, it sounds about right because if we're going to go by doctrine of signatures, it
Hmm.
seems like that's what it would be.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I should have thrown a photo in here, but it just popped into my head. I was like, that's a good example of
It
over
is.
harvesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's even just native stands of different types of species too. Is just um, they're completely being wiped out by folks coming in, and also some people who are new to harvesting or new to foraging specifically. Sometimes they don't there's usually this kind of folk like rule of you only gather like 1/3 of the plant. If you only see one plant, don't take it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to see like a stand of plants, because there are species that if you pick them, that's it. If they might not reproduce in a way like with through root division or anything. So if you take the whole plant, that's gone. It won't come. It won't grow again in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's really terrible. So many plants that are just literally being harvested to extinction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and poaching. I wanted just to quickly mention poaching. So this
Right.
is common in the rainforest, in even in our regular habitats, even urban habitats, and especially in California, for instance. There People are trying to poach peyote,
Mm-hmm.
and different cacti like that are medicinals and very sacred to indigenous peoples. And
Yes.
but there's also a big issue of mistaken identity. So there's the star cactus, which I actually have a little one here. Hard to see because it's such a little thing.
Okay.
Um, but this guy, unfortunately, in so this was a cultivated one grown in a greenhouse, but in its native habitat, it's becoming more and more hard to find because folks, it looks very much like peyote. It looks very much like this other species, and so folks collect it thinking it's the species they want, and it's not. So now that ends up causing a lot of issues for a species that has nothing to do with with what they're looking for. But these things can happen, and then they have, of course, climate change effects on phenology, which are these patterns of nature, like the timing. So
Yeah.
timing of things, whether like with temperature, blooming times for certain flowers, emerging times for certain types of insects. Over millions of years, these patterns, this has become a well-oiled machine, right? They work in sync, and with rising temperatures, fluctuating amounts of rain, all these types of things are definitely throwing things off. Some plants are blooming way too early. So then their pollinators aren't awake yet. They haven't emerged yet, or they haven't finished metamorphosizing yet. So they're not ready to pollinate. So then the flowers already start to close, and they weren't able to get pollinated. So you lose that whole batch, that whole area isn't able to reproduce if they need a pollinator, right, to assist them with the process. So it's like
Yes,
these.
that's. Mhm. I'm
No, no.
sorry.
Mhm.
That really is observable right here in the city
Yeah,
because we comment that the trees are not turning green yet, or the leaves aren't falling off the trees. They're not changing. So it is an obvious occurrence if you are paying attention.
exactly.
Mhm.
And a lot of these things they're so like minute, you might not think much. Like even I'm an avid bird watcher, and we were noticing a few
Love
years
bird.
ago. they're amazing. I definitely recommend picking up that hobby.
Mhm.
Um, and we started noticing, for instance, that it was the first week of January and we were seeing snowdrops, right?
Mm.
This teeny tiny, it's a galanthus species. And uh, they're not supposed to be coming out until like maybe last week of January, beginning of February. So like you
Mhm.
start to kind of see these things, and they also cause other issues, like even with maple syrup.
Mhm.
So for instance, a lot of maple trees, because we've been having milder winters,
Yeah.
they've actually haven't been saving as much sugar over the winter. So they've actually folks who are in the industry have seen a drop in the amount of sugar content in the syrup. So
Mm.
it's dropped from, in the last 30 years, it's dropped from 6% to 4%. And they've actually had a few instances where some of their trees are only putting out syrup with a 2% sugar content. Um, so it's, but the quality of the syrup is changing. And this can be really bad for the maple syrup industry. Just, so there's all these little things that you don't realize until you kind of start noticing and talking to folks.
Well,
And then lastly,
something came up in my head just then.
of course,
Excuse me. Something came up in my head and said people need to get a control of their sugar addictions anyway. So
that's true.
nature is helping them out.
That's true. That's true.
But I get it.
No, yeah. And and then I guess lastly I just wanted to mention, like, introduce pests, disease competitors. So this is something else that plants are having to deal with, and it's not just plants, of course. Wildlife is included in this conversation, but we are just, kind of focusing right now on the plant aspect. But there are pests right now here in New York. We're dealing with the lanternfly.
Mm.
um we've been able to eradicate the Asian longhorn beetle, thankfully, but we're still dealing with the emerald ash borer. So our ash trees are under threat, and they also attack different types of hardwoods. So it's not just the ashes, um, but also like diseases, like so for instance, because I'm going to bring this up in a second. So
Sure.
here's just a few species that are at risk at different levels of risk. Some are just kind of slightly threatened or vulnerable. Some are actually threatened. But like with slippery elm, for instance, Dutch elm disease
Mm.
was introduced to the United States, and we used to have huge swaths of ash forest here in the United States, and Dutch elm disease really decimated that. And a really sad fact is that the largest stand of ash trees in the United States currently, so the
Mhm.
largest like grouping of ash trees right now, is along Fifth Avenue and right by Central Park, right on the edge of Central Park.
Really?
So that's the largest like grouping of ash trees in the United States, which is so sad because they're not even in a forest. They're on a sidewalk. It's super sad. But Dutch elm disease, the trees are getting inoculated, so they are. You might see them sometimes with little flags on them. So they are actually kind of getting like vaccinated. They're being inoculated with a pesticide that's supposed to ward. I'm sorry, pesticide. I think it's a fungicide
Mm.
um, to help against the disease. So there are efforts, of course, to save them, but there's all these different, like American ginseng is another native. That's a lot of these are being affected specifically by over harvesting.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to kind of show you, because these are species you might be, folks that may be watching or familiar with, that you might use in a day-to-day basis.
I
So always
definitely
make,
use golden seal a lot, and
yeah,
white sage I use a lot. Mhm.
yes. And so with herbs like that, you have to make sure you know where you're getting them from, right? That they're not being wild crafted, that it's not something, that somebody's going out and pulling up native stands
Mhm.
of the plants to and destroying the habitat in the process. Because
Mhm.
a lot of plants, what ends up happening is that whether it be for one reason or another, they become what is called functionally extinct. And
Mm.
so, where they can no longer fulfill the niche that they have in their ecosystem, right? So, there's only a handful of plants left. Maybe a majority, let's say, is male, and there's only one female plant left, because there are plants that are dioecious, which they're male or female. Um, and so the big issue with that is that now, if let's say you have one female and several males, um, it's not going to reproduce at a rate where that plant could continue to be a food source, let's say, to the wildlife in that area. It just becomes functionally extinct. It's just unable to reproduce on its own without human intervention. So, super, super sad. But a lot of these species, it's it's really deforestation that has caused these specific species to be at risk right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, you
Mhm.
mentioned two insects. Tell me what they're doing. The
Yes,
lanternfly, I think you said.
yes. So the lanternflies, I believe it's related to the cicada. I believe so.
Mm.
But what they do is they group up
Mm.
in large clusters on the trees and on the outside externally. But then they have these type of piercing mouthpieces,
Mm.
and they get into the tree. They tap the tree, and they basically suck out the juices. But if it was one, you don't think it's. But they come in droves. I mean, they come in large masses, and then they lay eggs all along the side of the tree, and so that
And
can
they
really stress
decimate the
out.
tree. Hmm.
Yeah, so they're just sucking out all like the sugar water, everything from the tree, and they just will all culminate like on one tree. And
Mm.
if it's a very young tree, it's not going to be able to take the stress. And that also can potentially introduce other like viruses or bacteria. Um, so it's a downward trajectory when they start to get infested. So right now in the United here, well, specifically in New York City, there's a kill on site order
Mm.
spotted lanternflies. So like the Parks Department, there's a bunch of like ads. So if you see one, they're asking you to please squish it. um
Wow.
so yeah. So thankfully I've only come across dead ones. I've come across squished ones. I
Mhm.
have yet to come across a live specimen. But I'm gonna be keeping my eye out.
Mhm.
um and
I'm
then
just
in
saying hi to Jennifer and
Of
Jerry.
course. No worries.
Mhm. Mhm.
um and so the other ones, so that the emerald ash borer, so what that does is it's very small. It's a very beautiful, it's like a very iridescent little green beetle. But what it does is it gets into the tree. It makes a very distinctive D shape. Like when it burrows into the tree, it has like one flat edge and one curved. So it looks kind of
Mhm.
like the letter D.
Mhm.
Um, Very distinctive opening, and they lay their eggs, and the larvae actually basically channel in the tree. So they start to eat away the inside of the tree. They attack the heartwood.
Wow.
Um, and what happens is now the tree becomes very unstable. This disrupts, the flow of the xylem and phloem, the food from the leaves and the water from the roots. They can cut through those little vessels and completely mess with that, and so the tree starts to die.
Yeah.
Um, and so now that tree, you might not be aware that it's happening, but then the usually the bark starts to kind of come off, and
Mm.
then if there's a
Mm.
big storm or something like that, you don't know
It
that
just
that tree
goes
is
over.
dead, and it can really hurt someone in the process. So yeah, there. So right now we're keeping our eyes peeled for those. So I wanted to definitely address the question as to why should you care. Um, a lot of folks don't. They kind of want to continue to dissociate.
Mhm.
They're like, oh, slippery elm is being over harvested. Oh well, I use it all the time, so I'm going to keep using it. So they might not really think about it. But if you know, it's worth kind of doing your research, finding out more. But you know, destruction of species is definitely something you should be caring about. This affects so many things. This limits the biodiversity, the genetic, you know, that gene pool is going to shrink. If you know, if you start to create these monocultures, so basically where several plants, like with a lot of farming where it's the same crop, right? This increases usually they're all clones or they're all very closely related. So what ends up happening is if you get a fungus, right, or some type of virus that one is susceptible, it's going to very easily spread to the entire crop. So you definitely want that biodiversity in your plants. Another thing is accessibility and quality of herbs, right? So you want to be able to, you know, if this is continuing, a lot of herbs you love and have worked with for years might not be available anymore. They also the quality of the herbs, right? So if they're constantly being over harvested to the point of extinction, and now there's maybe or functional extinction, we could say, and there's only like this one crop that's growing, let's say in Kansas, and it's not very good, you know, it's going to affect the, you know, what you're actually able to get your hands on too. And what was I going to say about that? I had like a little thing I wanted to throw in, and it escaped me. It'll come back. So, but in food chain interruption, you know, definitely like ecosystem deterioration. So, like I mentioned before, plants and wildlife, they're entangled. There's no way that they're interconnected. So, if you interrupt one, if you remove one from the sequence, it's like a domino effect. There's so many things that it starts to kind of cascade down and affect so many things. You know, it can affect our pollinators, and we need our pollinators for so many, just to continue, of course, you know, elevating biodiversity, but also a lot of our crops are reliant on pollinators, and so we need we need everything to be as healthy as we can possibly have them. And then the possibility of losing plants that we have yet to discover or study. So losing that potential, right? So destroying big swaths of the rainforest, and maybe there was something in there that could have helped, you know, someone that was currently suffering, and there's a constituent or there's some type of amazing remedy that, you know, has been lost to us, right, because of that. So there's definitely reasons why you should care, and it's something that goes hand in hand, I think, with being a really truly holistic herbalist is really understanding where the herbs are coming from, because we're caring so much about what we're putting in our bodies. You should definitely care, add herbs to that. It's not just, you know, working with these herbs, but it's like, what can you? It's a reciprocal thing. So, you know, you have to reciprocate. So I always feel like, of course, we love to use these plants as allies, but we should be their allies as well. It's not a one-sided street, you know. So you should definitely, you know, well, what can you do for that plant? You know, you can't just exploit it and rip it out of the ground. Now, what can you do to kind of give back and so that it keeps coming around, so that future generations can enjoy it. So I think that's just, you really have to, it's not a one-way street. So,
so before you move on,
of course,
I'd like to just tap in here because we have some other herbalists and healers on. I'm wondering if Jennifer has any comments or any questions for you, or Thais.
Hi, Jocelyn. It's so wonderful to hear this presentation.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And we too in Pennsylvania have the lanternfly and the same protocol for trying to alert everybody to start eyeballing for it. And unfortunately, our elm trees have already taken the loss. We've lost them all.
Wow.
On my farm, that was about 3 or 4 years ago. The last year of their lives was, I just had them logged out because, yeah, there aren't many of those left. And then we also have what is so that was the ash borer that did that. And then also, what I've noticed, Jocelyn, I won't take up too much time, but it was
No worries.
also maybe you have a little bit of this in your presentation too, but the farming practices that take away the hedgerows. Because years ago when we first came to the country here, oh my gosh, I could harvest elderberries just everywhere in the hedgerows. There was abundance like that. I can't find it anymore because the farmers take away the hedgerows to bring all the fields as clean as possible right up to the edges. And of course, the farming practices are not healthy farming practices for the land either, so I can understand how. But that's been my greatest sadness, is watching the loss of many of the wild foraging plants that were happily and vigorously growing in the fence rows, or what was called French rows, but was really just field edges between borders and boundaries that people set up within their land. So thank you. I guess I don't have any questions at this point.
No, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. I don't cover it in today's presentation, but that definitely is a big issue. I feel like permaculture sustainability right now, it's growing in terms of farming practices, but it's still, unfortunately, the majority are are not. So, we're hoping that continues to be an upward trend. But definitely, those issues between um, like productivity, weighing productivity and kind of trying to work with nature. They're not mutually exclusive, but a lot of farmers seem to think so. So, so it's very unfortunate. And so I did want to also highlight. So I think this was the same quote that you found, Carolyn. So that was kind of funny.
Oh, that's very nice.
Right? Yes, I giggled when I when I saw it. I was like, yeah, because it's a beautiful way to sum it up. What is ecological herbalism? And so it is very much that way of understanding this interconnectivity um, and an interdisciplinary approach, in terms that you do have to know, you kind of have to come at it from different angles. One very much so is like plant identification from a botanical perspective. So I know a lot of herbalists. I lead walks here around different green spaces, and I always get herbalists that are well versed in herbs, and but they have to like actually meet the plants themselves outdoors. So it's wonderful to make those introductions. So it's definitely wonderful, but it's very much about this, again, this reciprocation, right? Of you're using these herbs, but you're making sure that you're doing your part to give back as well, so you don't keep it going in flowing in one direction. Yeah. So a lot of people really do take it as a one-sided transaction. I guess that would be the best word right there.
And in turn, they treat each other that way as well.
Exactly. Yes. Like, oh, what can you do for me? What can and they approach the plants the same way. So it's always like, well, what can you do for them? Yeah.
Thais, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question.
Of course.
I thank you for this presentation. Thank you again, Chaplain, for making sure that I was here to hear all of this and to receive it. So with the overharvesting and the improper farming, techniques and things and practices and things of that nature, adding to the diminishing or the scarcity of the herbs and plants. Is that the reason for the increase in pricing because of the scarcity?
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely one has a lot to do with it. Definitely the scarcity. Also, right now, I know currently a lot of the pricing is related to the supply chain issues. So right now with the pandemic, it's caused a lot of those issues in regards to sourcing the plants themselves, and then the supply chain has been interrupted. Some exporters are no longer exporting. There's a bunch of laws now, that policies that have been put into place where I know, even I was just talking about this to someone where they are a plant shop, and they have been struggling because they can no longer import a lot of species, a lot of cut flowers and things, even not just like house plant species, but we're talking cut flowers, that were coming in, like from Dutch exporters, and that are right now, there's policies that they're not allowed to come into the country. And then there's so many reasons. Like, even I was just watching a presentation too, that eucalyptus, for instance, is going to be very difficult to find, probably for the next 2 years or so, because the back-to-back wildfires decimated the seed caches, basically, that we had, and in Australia. So yeah, so right now, even growers that are just trying, they're not going to be able to produce plugs, so basically like little seedlings. They're not going to be able to meet the demand for this year. Definitely, that's already known.
That's horrifying, because eucalyptus is used in Vicks Vapor Rub.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, I keep a bottle of eucalyptus by my bedside to, you know how you get a little congested as you sleep, to clear that away on the spot.
Yep.
So, I mean, this is really bad news.
Yeah. So you might actually see the essential oil price go up, at least for the next 2 years or so, until that kind of stock is replenished. So it's going to be, so, there's these little things like that that you don't even think about, that are happening everywhere, that are causing that. Oh, yes. Jennifer?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, because of the theme of your talk about how everything is interrelated. This woman who studies and talks and writes about the trees has talked about how monocropping, for example, the eucalyptus, is actually a driving force behind the fires that are going out of control. So it's like the relationship to those things that we then want and end up monocropping are also imbalancing things. And that just sort of, because the California in particular, because California has a lot of eucalyptus trees too. And evidently it drives the fires hotter because of the oils that are in that plant.
Oh, I see what you mean by monocropping. Like,
in other words, you're growing
Exactly.
in the same area.
Exactly. It's all the same.
Yeah, just like
And
we grow
oil
corn.
is flammable.
Yeah, very, very. So I think that's a beautiful way to continue looking at how your talk really relates to the diversity that's necessary, the way nature puts it there, and how much we change it to just because of selfishness, when we want some more of something and make a profit on it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Greed.
Yeah, of course. No, yeah, absolutely. So it all is tied together. And sometimes you have to, like I said, come at it from different perspectives. And I love participating, and I like talking to, like, plant shop owners, farmers, folks that are they're working completely different spheres. I've interviewed, like, beekeepers, and talking about how phenology, so a lot of flowers blooming either late or early, is actually affecting beekeepers. I was
be in touch with a beekeeper or two. I would love to have them on. Please let them know.
Yes, absolutely. So you start to kind of have these conversations with people in different little spheres, and you're like, that relates to what I work, So you start to
It
kind of see these
does.
little things, and it's really a web. It's seriously a web. So,
Mhm.
um,
And
so
that's
what
what
I
I'm aiming for a healing project to be.
yes,
One of those offshoots in that web, because we all need to come together and really start sharing this information. COVID got such a hold on us because we were separate, you know, Western medicine over here, Eastern medicine over here. I know a little bit of this, I know a little bit of that, you know a little bit of this, you know a little bit of that, but no one coming together. And so the goal is to bring everyone together so we could see the connection.
exactly.
That's the only way we're going to see it, if we speak with one another.
Exactly. Yes, I think a lot of folks are they're definitely blind to the fact that we're plugged into the network. Um, you
Yes.
but
It's
folks,
like, hello, we're
yeah,
here.
we're here. We're part of nature. A lot of folks really kind of think of nature and us, as
Yes,
two different.
exactly.
We're all in the
It's
we're all
true,
connected.
Jocelyn.
Um,
We
so
are nature. We
exactly,
are.
we are nature. Absolutely, absolutely, we are nature, and so folks need to start to really embrace that idea, and I'll talk about it more later in the presentation. But just like a snippet is also, don't underestimate your impact. So I think that's also a big thing. Is a lot of folks think, oh, I found this lady slipper orchid, and it's the only one there, and they go, if I take it, it's not a big deal. It's just one plant. You
Mm.
don't, it's just one plant. And what ends up happening is, well, if you remove that orchid there, it's one of our like native woodland orchids.
Mhm.
That's it.
Mm.
It didn't have, it couldn't put its seeds out. It doesn't grow by division. So once you remove the plant from the ecosystem, it's gone. Um, so you might think you're not doing a lot of harm, but so I think a lot of people underestimate, and think, oh, it's just that one time, but then you don't know there's 200 other people behind you. You're going, it's just, I'm just
Just
going to
that
take
one
that one
time.
plant,
Yes.
and then
Mhm.
you don't realize. So definitely, know that you play a very large role in these mechanisms. So yes, you have a question?
Yeah. My next question is, so you were saying that there are things that we need to do to give back
Yeah.
and to help the sustain and recultivate the plant life. What are some things that a normal person like me can do? I'm simply a consumer of these herbs. Until today, I really didn't even know or didn't think about how my consumption of these wonderful plants are forcing them into extinction almost. So what
Mhm.
are some things that
And
a layperson can do?
I want to interject
Uh-huh.
and allow you to answer that question toward the end of your presentation,
Yeah, it's
Oh,
because
it's
oh,
in
that's sort of
sorry.
like a summation.
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No. What's really hilarious is you're ready. You're on the ball there.
There it is.
It was the very next
I
slide.
knew it was
So you
coming
are,
up. I just didn't know where.
yeah. So this is one aspect of it, and then there's more at the end about being an informed consumer.
Okay.
So definitely, it's coming up. It's coming up. I promise. So perfect. You're
Thank
in
you,
the right
Kai.
mindset. You're
Mhm.
following the. You're on the same vein. So
Yes.
perfect. So with one big thing, so I wanted to talk a little bit about my work with invasives, introduce you to a couple medicinal invasives.
Mhm.
One big thing is, so there are some, we're going to talk about a few, but so by invasive, right? Because sometimes this becomes this ends up, this word ends up kind of being a catch-all to describe a lot of different types of what people consider weeds. But this isn't always the case. We have a lot of native species that are just prolific, like they just tend to spread. they can become, again, what we deem weedy, right? A weed is just a plant that, the person just doesn't want there. It's doing its thing. It's doing its thing. The gardener is just upset. And some, if a rose bush is growing in a cornfield, that's considered the weed. The rose is the weed in that scenario. So that's, sometimes what people deem as weeds are not necessarily like bad plants. This is like a big stereotype where a weed is a bad plant. But in terms of invasives, these are supposed to be kind of describing certain species that have been introduced to our green spaces, to our local environments, that are wreaking havoc on the local ecosystem. So they're actually causing an issue for our wildlife, for the other native plant species, the actual native species that are there. So a few things that, I definitely recommend doing if you really want to get out there, if you want to physically get out there and like here, get your hands dirty, get your hands in the soil. There's some great things you should look by you, in your counties, in your cities. Look up habitat restoration initiatives. Maybe there's programs. I know here, all around there's different little pockets of different what they call like squads. So like I'm part of like the Westchester invasive vine squad. So I'm on their volunteer list. So they email us, hey, we're all going to this spot and we need all hands on deck, and you go and help cut back a bunch of vines that are invasive, that are weighing trees down, that are species that don't naturally occur here. So it happens a lot with bittersweet vines, where they're just ginormous. They're huge. They weigh down the plant. They strangle young trees.
Oh.
So yeah, very, very bad, invasive. And so they need help. They need hands to remove them. So look up to like stewardship programs, things like that. So with the New York City Parks Department, there's great, I'm a super steward. So basically you go through extensive training, and it's free. It's free to do. You just have to show up and do the work, and it's believe me, it's worth it. It's wonderful. There's so much that you can learn. They show you how to also appropriately remove the plants. So this is one big thing too, is that there are issues in which some folks, remove the plant incorrectly. So I'll talk more about that with some upcoming examples as to what people accidentally do that actually ends up making the problem worse. So just for one thing. But you can also, look up for your volunteer things at local parks. There's a lot of organizations called like Friends of, and then insert name of your park, right? So like Friends of Alley Pond Park, Friends of Central Park, Friends of Prospect Park. So you can sometimes even use those keywords to find a local group that is doing volunteer work at your local park. And you can join them and help them out, see what issues are they having that you can assist with. And then there's so many trainings available. You should definitely look at your botanical gardens, your local botanical gardens, different types of like nature-based educational organizations in your area that might be giving free programmings, or at least at low cost. That because maybe you want to be out there but you can't, right? Maybe there's something physically you can't go out there, or you have a very large work schedule, so this is not something that you can kind of go out there and do the work yourself. And you can also do it behind the scenes, get some training. A lot of trainings have been moved to Zoom, and then you in turn can educate others or spread the word, and that's definitely a big part of it. So don't feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough, I'm not out there, I'm not physically out there. But you can do so much by just spreading the word. So like, for example, here's a pic of me with the invasive vine squad. We're with our big loppers there. We were cutting down these huge bittersweet vines, as you can see. And then I also lead, as I mentioned, local walks around our green spaces here in New York City, across different boroughs. So you can help in one way or another. So it doesn't, but helping doesn't look like one way. There's so many different ways that you can come at it. So don't worry if you're like, oh well, I can't go out there and be ripping out plants. So don't worry about that. You can still do a lot. Even just sharing, like, hey, don't plant this kind of things. That's really, really helpful, and letting people know that this is a thing. This exists. So one plant I definitely want to talk about is multiflora rose. So the Latin name is Rosa multiflora, but you do commonly see it referred to as bramble rose, rambler rose, or multiflora rose. So it's like the Latin name inverted. These are beautiful. They are very beautiful. Unfortunately, they were introduced as basically as cover in like the highway medians and stuff to make it green. These put out these gorgeous white flowers in the spring, and they kind of they stay pretty green throughout the winter. So aesthetically very pleasing. And so unfortunately, they're not native to the area. They're to the United States, I should say. They're native actually to Asia, especially in Japan and Korea, Taiwan, in some areas, I believe, of Eastern China. And these, what the problem was that there was actually initiatives where botanical gardens were telling folks that this was great for erosion, to help mitigate erosion, because they form these huge thickets, as you can see in this other photo here. It's just huge masses. And so the botanical gardens, especially in the 30s and 40s, they really, really were pushing this, and they were actually giving away cuttings and telling people to plant them in their yards. And millions, we're talking millions of cuttings were distributed especially in the eastern United States. And it led to the invasion. They spread very easily. One big mistake that a lot of folks make is they think just like whacking them down is going to be enough, but these will actually root in the soil. Yeah, so cutting. So if anybody has ever worked with roses, you can propagate them via cuttings. So a lot of folks see these in their yards, they huge thicket, and they think, oh, I'm just gonna whack it and it'll be fine. But you do actually have to dispose of them, unfortunately, like in plastic bags or something like that, because you have to keep them from touching the ground. And if you are going to be moving them, some folks, what they do is they'll actually put a tarp out, like for long-term projects. They'll put a tarp out in the park, and you put all of these cuttings that you've made in removing, you put them on the tarp, and you let them basically bake in the sun. So they don't touch the soil because there's that barrier. So they just bake in the sun, they dehydrate, they're not viable anymore. But then if you wanted to use it as like cover, as brush or compost, you have to make sure you remove all of the rose hips, which are very, very high in vitamin C. But you have to remove all of those rose hips, because if you throw all that into the compost, those seeds are still going to be viable, no matter if they've been in the sun. So you can end up accidentally spreading them that way. So this is a really big problem. These guys also have thorns. So have plenty of scars from removing these. They are a big issue in our local parks. Wineberry is another one, absolutely beautiful. This was also introduced from Europe, I believe, and Asia. So they are actually related to our raspberries, and they were actually introduced as rootstock for a lot of different raspberry varieties. So through grafting. So if you're familiar with grafting, so it's kind of, for those of you who aren't, it's like Frankensteining plants. So you're taking, that rootstock, and then you're grafting, actually fusing another variety so that you can make clones, right? So if you have one, and let's say it's putting out an offshoot that's a beautiful color, or producing a lot of fruit, and you want to keep that going. Grafting is a really, really cool process. But this was being used as rootstock, so which means that sometimes that rootstock, starts actually putting out what are called suckers, things like that, where they actually start to reproduce and continue to spread. So it's not just that the top part that's viable, but the rootstock starts actually producing these types of things. So wine berries, while they are delicious and they have traditionally been used for winemaking, as the name suggests, and they are being eaten by birds, which is another big reason why they're being spread so much. These guys are another one of those plants that if you chop them, and they will just end up everywhere. You'll end up, if you mow them, you're just spreading them around, unfortunately. So they're really beautiful. And while they are feeding wildlife, so a big issue with invasive species is that they tend to not feed wildlife. So either they can be toxic to our native wildlife, or our wildlife just simply doesn't recognize it as a food source. And so this can take a very long time. There's actually species like Phragmites, which is a very big invasive around our like wetland areas. It's like a grass. It's really tall and like has like a tufted top. They have been here for over a century, and it's just now that there have been some records of some of our native caterpillars starting to actually feed on that. So it takes a very long time for those relationships to become established. So some folks go, oh well, but then the animals will just eat it, but that's not always the case. And so sometimes you might go to a park and you see that it's beautiful and lush and green, but you might not realize, well, all these plants are not native, and so technically this is a desert for our native birds, for our native insects. This is a food desert. So while you look at it and it looks green and beautiful and lush, there's actually nothing that our native wildlife can make use of. They can't eat it, and so you might be very mistaken thinking you have a very healthy habitat, you have a very healthy yard, but if you don't have natives in there, you're not supporting the surrounding ecosystem. Lesser celandine is another one that is, as you can see, it tends to blanket the ground. It's very low growing, beautiful yellow flowers that usually emerge like late April, kind of into like mid-May. Really beautiful, but they spread like wildfire. This is one big issue in Central Park, where they are just huge swaths of them are just like everywhere. These guys are actually medicinal in that they're not to be used internally. They're very toxic, but they can be used externally. They can be used as a poultice for pain, for like rheumatic pain, things like that, but not to be taken internally. And so these are usually harvested when they're flowering. And so again, like around that springtime. But these are a big issue, and they have these little like rhizomes, and so they form these little clusters, and they continue to spread underground that way. So they create these huge networks of roots. So when you kind of rip up one, you start to kind of continue. It's like sod, like grass. You pick some up and you rip a whole section because they're just all intertwining their roots there. And these are actually native to Europe and Northern Africa. And they're also known as the fig buttercup is another common name. And so these were introduced as an ornamental, like in the 1700s, and they spread, unfortunately. So we do a lot of initiatives to try to rip this up. But I wanted to really focus on two types of invasives that a lot of me and my volunteers tend to work with a lot, that are very highly medicinal, and I love being able to introduce folks to these. So garlic mustard. So garlic mustard is a mustard, but it gets its name because when you crush the leaves, it's a very distinct mustard smell of mustard. Of garlic. Really, really amazing. It tastes amazing. I love making pesto out of garlic mustard. absolutely delicious. You can use the seeds themselves as well to make mustard, to make your own mustard. They're very small. You need a large amount of seeds, but they are a substitute. So if you did want to, help that way, because that's the one big issue with garlic mustard is how they spread. So one plant can produce anywhere from 500 to 1,000 seeds. And they have what are called sleeks. And so they're these little kind of, they're very paper-like little kind of little like cases. And so what happens, these little pods, when they dry out, they crack open, drop seeds, but also if you were to brush up against them, they're so thin that, just an animal walking by, a human walking by, just touching them can cause them to break if they're mature. And then the seeds would be released. And one big issue is with these seeds is that they have been found to be allelopathic. And so where they actually send out chemical signals to suppress other seeds in that vicinity from germinating. So they basically are sending out signals telling the other seeds that it's not time for them to emerge, therefore suppressing their competitors. And this is not unique to garlic mustard. There's other species that do this, like black walnut is a great example. They do this as well. There's like pine trees and the needles as well that will suppress growth around the base of the tree. So it's not just this, but it's a good example. But there are recent studies, I believe, like by Boston University, where there was previous studies stating that these chemicals could stay in the ground for even like a decade. But there's a recent Boston University study saying that it might not be as harmful as we thought in terms of how long it lasts in the soil. But it definitely does have a part to play in why it has spread so much and kind of affected the biodiversity in our green spaces. Oh, yes, Jennifer?
And you can also use the root as a horseradish substitute.
Yes, the whole plant, yes.
The whole plant
is edible.
The whole plant is usable, yep.
Delicious, yes, it is. And I definitely wanted to just show you, I love collecting. I've been working, my husband and I are working right now on an app with a bunch.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So with a bunch of plants right now, the list is at like 1,300 species, but I've been collecting a bunch of different facts about these different species, and I love collecting common names because sometimes they just crack me up. For instance, like poor man's mustard is a great one. And sauce alone, there's just some really odd names, and you come across so many. They're really, they can be very, very hilarious. You'll see with we're going to talk about dandelion. I'll show you my favorite common name in a moment. So some identifying characteristics. So these leaves are what are known as reniform. So that means that they're shaped like kidneys. So, which is really wonderful. I'll show you. This is the flower close up. It's four petaled, which is typical for mustard family plants. So really beautiful little white flowers. Very diminutive. They're not very huge. Very, very beautiful. But these are the leaves, and so you can see that kind of kidney shape. A lot of folks do commonly misidentify this and think it's either like a creeping Charlie for one, or they might think it's a violet. I get that a lot where folks will think the plant is a violet. I also do it I work also as an environmental consultant. So people basically hire me to inspect their land, whether it's a yard or bigger than that. And sometimes just to point out what is on the land, because sometimes they know that, yeah, I have trees, I have all this greenery. I don't know what's here. I don't know if this is good or bad. I don't know. Maybe they want to put in certain types of plants, and so they want to know what's there. Should they be removing it, right? So some people are becoming much more conscious of that, where maybe I shouldn't be cutting this tree down. Maybe I shouldn't be removing this bush because it might be a native, but they don't know. So then I get hired to kind of come in and just point things out for them. And so help them kind of with these plans so they can work with the landscaper and work around these plants if need be, or what plants need to be removed. And I've had a lot of folks think that, oh, these are violets, because they will grow right next to violets. You might see actual like violets growing happily, and these are really kind of camouflaged in there. And so you might not, think about them. But I did want to just mention that they really like disturbed soils, and you do tend to see them along trails, but you can find them deeper in wooded areas as well. So that's a very big issue because they can end up suppressing young trees, unfortunately. And just to show you, so this is when it's in flower. It can get very tall. It can get almost like my height, like anywhere from like 4 to 5 feet tall. They can get pretty substantial. And this is what they do, is that they become these huge thickets. So as you can see, it just shades everything out. So it completely covers any little potential trees or any native plants that are trying to survive here. You can see they're just blanketed out. Unfortunately, they're completely covered. And thankfully, as Jennifer mentioned, yes, the whole plant, right? The whole plant can be consumed. Now, the older the plant is, so it is a biennial. So it completes its life cycle. It's a 2-year life cycle. So when it's better to collect the leaves when they're young, they're not as bitter. As they get larger, they tend to get a little bit bitter. I personally don't mind bitterness, but of course a lot of folks do. So just be forewarned that if you collect the larger leaves, they might be a little bit more bitter for you. Now they are very helpful. There's so many things that you can use them for. I love using them when I'm out. If I get a cut, my husband and I, we like to go hiking. And if somebody gets scraped, we get scratched, things like that. Garlic mustard is wonderful to apply there, just until we get to our first aid kit. If we left it in the car, we forgot to bring one. It's something that we can use right then and there. It's a very strong antiseptic. It's a great vulnerary. Yes, Jennifer.
Sorry to interrupt again.
No, you're fine.
Since it's like a mustard, I see you have a poultice for it.
Yeah.
Would that burn like a mustard poultice would too?
No. So these would be making it out of the leaves specifically, and so you don't get that same reaction. So usually the reasons that they burn is because they're using the actual seeds in the poultice making process, and so the seeds are what can be pretty spicy. So they definitely, to the skin, they can definitely cause redness. For some people who have much more sensitive skin, they can definitely cause burns. With these guys, definitely the poultice I would recommend more so with just the leaves. A spit poultice is usually the go-to. You kind of chew it up. Of course, somebody else might not appreciate you doing that for them, but they can do it themselves.
I understand. Similar to a plantain spit poultice. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. And I wonder too if it wouldn't be good for like when you're putting it in the alcohol tincture for the mosquito repellent. It just somehow came to me that would be probably one of its uses too, having that strong garlicky kind of smell and stuff. Have you ever used it? As insect repellent?
I've seen it used as an insect repellent, paired with like rosemary, and what was the other one? I've seen mugwort also be used as a repellent. And I'm trying to think of the other one. Did I say yarrow? I've seen yarrow also used.
I've seen yarrow for mosquitoes. Yes.
Yeah. So a few plants like that. Yeah, kind of put in like blends for like natural repellent.
Yeah, great. I have plenty, so I can start using this externally. I never have. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. So I mean, they're great. Also, like the tinctures. I've made the tinctures with the whole plant. And for I had like a molar that I didn't realize it never erupted. It never came out. My with my wisdom tooth, I had to get it removed a few years back. This was wonderful. The tincture was wonderful. I used garlic mustard tincture as well as plantain tincture. Um, Wonderful for the healing process. So you know they were great. You can make infused oils with them. Some folks will use them culinarily, just you know for the flavoring. But of course, there's so many great things that it can do for you too. And I have seen that it's been traditionally used as a bronchodilator, so helping with folks with asthma as well. So you know, it's super interesting little plant. Um, and yeah, so definitely recommend checking that out. So what I like to do is when I bring out large groups to do work and to do like invasive plant removal, I love being able to let them know like, yeah, we're removing these plants, but there's something you can do with them. And of course, that's going to differ in the area we're working because sometimes some areas you don't know if the soil has been sprayed or anything like that. So you wouldn't want to recommend ingesting it, but at least this also gives them a chance to at least work with the plant and look at it and smell it and you know kind of imprint it into their minds so that when they see it again maybe in a different capacity like in their own yard where they're not spraying or something like that they'd be able to use it um, on their own. Another big one that we have a lot of issues with is mugwort. So mugwort is amazing.
Yes,
So
we love
many
mugwort.
we love mugwort. Yeah, so many things, so many great things, and what I love is also the felon herb is great. There's so many great common names with these guys, but you know these guys can get very tall. They also grow in these huge thickets. And when you rub the leaves, the bottom of the leaf, so there's the adaxial, which is the top of the leaf, and the back of the leaf is called the abaxial. It's easy because the back. So the abaxial are usually silver. You might not see it when they're tiny. They kind of look like parsley when they're first emerging. But as the plant grows, it starts to get that silver underbelly, you know, that silver underside.
Sunlight.
Absolutely gorgeous, very striking. And when they will actually flower, which we'll see here, the leaves will actually start to kind of elongate and they can become like single pointed or only three pointed. And these can get super tall. They are not, they're very disliked by folks who suffer from seasonal allergies because they do produce very large amounts of large amount of pollen. So if you actually go up to them and you just kind of shake the plant, it's just you just see it really go like a cloud. So, but these are really strong medicinals. I just wanted to really kind of give you a close up look here at what these leaves can look like, because even depending on the leaves closer to the top, especially if it's close to flowering, will start to change their shape. So they won't look so much like those parsley like leaves. They get these kind of elongated, longer spikes. But this is what happens. So similarly to garlic mustard, they create these huge thickets. And so they become these monocultures, right? So they become this thing, they wipe out anything that's growing there. We've been battling this, especially with reforestation projects, because they shade out young trees. So we'll plant some young pine trees, for instance. We were working on a project in some wetlands in Flushing Meadows Park, and the mugwort was so tall you couldn't even see the trees that had been planted. Yeah, so you end up having to go in there and remove as much as possible. And here's also one thing that I want to mention is that sometimes when you remove these plants, you're disturbing the soil and then you're creating a vacuum. So basically what happens is that you remove this and something is going to come and populate. this extra real estate now, right? It's open, free for the taking. And what happens is that sometimes these invasives are much quicker to germinate and establish themselves than our native species. So a lot of times when we're working on these types of projects, we actually advise folks to just cut them down to the base and leave the roots, because we would rather we remove the shade aspect of them. But if we remove the roots, it's going to cause this vacuum, and so it's going to take the plant the next season to really get itself restored again. So kind of working, it's like the lesser of the of an evil, because you don't know if you remove this plant like completely, you might actually leave a space for something worse to come and take its place. So we will actually cut these down all the way to the bottom, right above the soil, and just leave the roots. And they'll come back. They definitely come back, but at least it gives some time for our trees, to kind of establish themselves during that season and kind of get themselves going. But it's a continuous battle, unfortunately. And in terms of how you can use these, so then a lot of times these areas are protected areas. Sometimes we do work in like nature preserves, and so they're not spraying them, so they know they're safe if we wanted to use them. So what's great is everyone can leave with bags of mugwort if they wanted to. Yeah, so it's a great type of it's a great activity, making like smudge sticks as well. Showing how to dry them and the process of doing that. So having this kind of we're removing and then we're making use of it, right? We're not adding that to a landfill. We're doing something with it. And so they have these it works great as a tea. It was traditionally used, or it's still traditionally used, as a stew herb in a lot of Asian cultures. They kind of throw that in for flavoring. It actually predates hops as a flavoring agent in beer, which is really cool. It's related to wormwood, absinthe. So it does have some some effects in terms psychologically. They actually have been used traditionally as well as a dream enhancer, like for lucid dreaming.
That's what I use for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely like using the tincture. For me, it's not so much lucid dreaming, but more dream recall. So I tend to have a dream, right? Yeah. I tend to have a dream. I know I had a dream. I know I had a dream. And maybe I remember there was a car involved, and that's all. That's all I got. I can't remember anything else. But when I do remember to take my mugwort tincture, I remember every detail. I can write an essay about the entire dream from start to finish. So it's wonderful, especially when I need to, call for some inspiration or things like that. I love to take some mugwort tincture. I need a plant to tell me something. I make sure I need to hone myself in, prepare myself for a message. Mugwort is my go-to herb. But it's also used as an orexigenic, so it can actually increase appetite. So it can be used that way. So it's used also as an anti-inflammatory. It is stimulating to the uterine lining, so like to the uterus. So it can cause, it can bring on the menstrual cycle. So to be very, very mindful of that. Some folks on purpose, right? If the menstrual cycle is late, it can be used as an emmenagogue. It's really, really strong. There is, depending, there's some folks that say, less is more, don't abuse it. There are certain types of constituents in there that can be a little problematic. So, always use it. Make sure you do your research. Make sure you don't have any allergic reactions or allergies to plants, before you start working with them. Even families of plants. So I tell folks, like, for instance, like, I'm allergic to sunflowers, but I can still I can take like other asters completely fine. I can, take burdock, I can take dandelion, and I'm fine. But just being aware that these plants are related, and I, should mindfully try to test out a new plant, let's say, that I'm not familiar with, maybe it's related to sunflower, you should always check to see if you could potentially have an allergic reaction. So don't just dive into an herb without knowing these types of things, especially if you have any types of allergies. But you can make them into alcohol tinctures. I think they taste wonderful. Some folks, it's aromatic and bitter for them, so they don't really appreciate it too much. You can also make these into incense. And so I tell folks, when we pull plants, mugwort up from areas, or we're cutting it back from areas that we don't know what the root, the soil situation is, these are actually really good at remediating soil and pulling up metals and like heavy metals and things like that. So you want to make sure you're not consuming that internally. So with those types of things, when we're in those places and folks still want to do something with them, we talk about smudge. You can make smudge sticks. You can make your own incense out of mugwort as well. It is traditionally used in Chinese traditional medicine as moxa. Yeah. So it's powdered and to activate like the meridians, and when you're doing acupuncture and things like that. So sometimes they're put on the end of the needles. I think I put a photo. There we go. Yeah. So, you can be used externally as well. So if you're not sure, if, you can find external ways of using the plant material in a safe way, so that, just in case you're not sure that if there's something going on with that soil. But yeah, and it can be used as a tea as well. It can be an acquired taste. Some folks aren't in the mood for it, but it's a great flavoring agent. And then I want to also introduce you to some species that are introduced species. But they have a lower impact, right? So they're species that have been introduced to our green spaces, but they aren't wreaking havoc as some of these other ones, right? These really invasive species that are really driving, ecosystem decline. So certain plants like clover. Clover has been here for a very, 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 very long time, and it's a wonderful plant. It's actually been on the rise as becoming like a cover crop. It's being used as a cover crop for a lot of like sustainable permaculture farming practices because they're in the pea family. And so they are nitrogen fixing. And so they really help kind of prepare the soil. If you need to kind of, the soil has been very nutrient deficient. So you plant a bunch of clover, it really starts to enrich that soil. So, and also it covers that area. So it keeps other weeds, right, from invading. So it can suppress that. But then we're actually working with the plant, in this way. And then you can end up planting what needs to be planted in that area. So it's just a cool way that you can also partner, right, with introduced species, that they're not always as bad, right, as some can be. But these have been, around for a very, very long time, introduced from Europe. They're still very much used traditionally as teas. In Russia, especially, they're called, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, clever. It's clever tea. And so used especially for kids as like a multivitamin tea, because they're so enriched with things like phosphorus and a bunch of different types of potassium, a bunch of different types of vitamins. So they're something that's really great to work with. And they can get somewhat tall for a clover, but they tend to really stay pretty close to the ground with really gorgeous flowers. Just to show you a kind of a close up, so they're not just these little pom-poms. They're actually a collection of flowers. So there's multiple flowers on there. They're really, really beautiful. And this is the red variety, the red clover. and there's also the white clover. So these might look familiar. And they do typically have 3 leaves, but if you're lucky, you might find a 4-leaf clover. So I wanted to show you that. But this is also a great way to show you these kind of markings that you see that are shaped like a V. So these are called chevrons. And so these are a great way to identify a clover because they have these very, very distinctive chevrons. Here you can see in the illustration as well as some, a foliage close up of these really distinctive markings. Really, really wonderful. I love clover tea. I love making red clover and stinging nettle tea.
Oh yes.
So amazing. I love using them as infusions too. So having like that with, and adding, sometimes I'll add mullein as well in there, make it like an overnight infusion.
Great for this weather.
Yes, absolutely. And here's just this was actually a photo of someone using clover as a cover crop. So again, so they're actually pairing up with this introduced species to reinvigorate the soil and actually work with it. So sometimes, these introduced species, and these have been kind of recognized by our native wildlife as a food source. So they haven't really been negatively impacting in that regard. And also a lot of like our honeybees, while we do have native honeybees in the Americas, they're very rare. So they're closer like to like Mexico and in Central America. But these, are the European honeybees that have been introduced and are thriving here. Well, trying to, currently, they love red clover. And the all the aerial parts, I haven't really heard of folks using the roots. So, but it could just be that I'm unaware of that. But it's typically the stems, the flowers, and the leaves that are being used, usually dried out and used in teas and infusions. But they make a really great eye wash too. So for agitated eyes, conjunctivitis, a good alternative if you're unable to get your hands on eye bright, and especially eye bright being right now that it the native populations are under threat. So this is a much more plentiful alternative. And you can also use them as an alcohol tincture. I have seen some poultices because it's pretty good. Also for like abrasions, it can just be very cooling to the skin. So I have seen folks actually use this if they don't have anything else on hand. And they're edible. You can have them. You can eat the flowers. You can eat the leaves. You can add them to your salad. For a little pop of color. So you can definitely enjoy them that way. They're great also for coughs. So they work really well as an antispasmodic. They're just a really, really wonderful plant that we can use. That is very plentiful. And, is something introduced. So you don't have to feel bad about using, taking it. It's something that folks would appreciate. Maybe, if they're not purposely planting it as a cover crop, they will be appreciative if you wanted to lessen it. Yes, Jennifer.
The eye wash component. I've never heard of that. Have you used that? And how do you use it?
Yes. Yeah. So I have used it. And so basically just the same way I would make like an eye bright. So I just make an infusion, and I just make sure it's, at a comfortable, it's about 2 hours of infusion time. And then I make sure that it's not hot.
Right.
Sometimes if you really pour like really boiling water, even after 2 hours, it can still, in glass, or if you're using some type of, depending on the vessel you're using, it can end up still being a little hot. So you're going to make sure that it's at a comfortable temperature, and strain. So that's really important, is straining it. So fine filtering it, very, very important. So you don't get debris in your eye. any pieces of leaf, anything like that. So you want to make sure you can use like a coffee filter, or there's like the cheesecloth or muslin or something like that to really make sure you catch any little bits and pieces before that. But I recommend using an eye wash cup. So they're absolutely wonderful. I'm not sure where mine is right now, or else I would have grabbed it.
Right. No, no, I know. I was wondering if you use it for like red irritated.
Yes. Oh, yes,
eyes.
yes.
It's
Yes.
the kind of symptoms of the eye.
Oh,
that
yes.
you see.
So you can use it, for red inflamed eyes, especially. So I'm prone to allergies.
Yeah.
So I love my cats, but if a cat hair, one of their hairs ends up in my eyes, it's horrendous. So
Okay.
using it
Good to know.
as a flush
Yeah.
is
Good.
wonderful. Yeah,
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That's
And Jocelyn,
Yes.
deobstruent. I understand that it clears up obstructions, but what kind?
Yeah. So that's more. So it's very similar to like a laxative. So to kind of get
Oh,
things
okay.
moving, kind of remove those blockages.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. So very, very helpful
Mhm.
for some folks to
Right.
get things
So that's an
moving.
alternative then to my beloved Cascara Sagrada.
Yes, yes. Cascara can be a little agitating to some folks. They can be a little bit sensitive.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can definitely red clover is like a gentler deobstruction.
Right, but it
Yeah.
doesn't. So then red clover isn't the kind of laxative or purgative per se that will send you running to the bathroom. You'll just
No,
go naturally.
exactly. Yeah, it's much more gentle.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that's why it's very commonly used with children. Red
Ah,
clover is very, very commonly used with children because it's very, very gentle. So it's something for everyday use. Um,
okay.
it's so yeah. So definitely not a purgative like that. So it would not send you running. Don't worry.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And then
I
uh-huh.
find it important for breast health, protecting breast health.
Yep. I've seen a lot. It's very much used in women's health. It's such an amazing herb. I seriously recommend it. Now for if you haven't worked with it. So dandelion. So this is the one with the hilarious common name that I can't look at and not share with you. So pissabed. It's my favorite common name. It's hilarious. And so I got this name because it's a very strong diuretic. And so in the times of the like settlers and long voyages on ships, many of the sailors were prone to scurvy. And so it was because they that lower amount of, they weren't getting access to like vitamin C, to greens. And so it was found that having some type of preserved green that can be supplemented, could be eaten and preserved, would help with this type of issue. And so this was a weed, something that grew everywhere in Europe. And so they were collected and they would drive them in barrels and they would keep them on the ship. And this was something that was supplemented in with their food. And so what was very common is that they would wet the bed. So they would not wake up in time. And so
That it's moniker.
yes, exactly. So it's a hilarious common name. There's so many other ones. These are not all the common names. These are just some really cool ones, especially the white envy.
Swine snout, yeah. I think swine snout piques some interest as well.
Yes, swine snout. Lion's tooth, which is more so about the leaf shape. So the dentate, those serrations on the leaves themselves that kind of look like teeth. So glow ball, which is more so about the seed head. So it's very interesting, depending on the region, what part of the plant was focused on in regards to the naming of it. So super, super cool. Now, these also tend to grow low to the ground. These are recognized a lot by our native pollinators and, of course, the European honeybees. So they are something that can be the bane of some folks' existence. Those who are very, obsessed with lawn care. So they'll have these kind of pop up randomly, and even if you yank them out, if you leave a section of that root, it's going to come back. But it's such a great, I'm hoping people, I see more and more people every day steering away from conventional lawns. And so I hope that continues, that trajectory continues. But these, while they can create big clusters, they can grow in big clusters. This isn't something that proliferates to the point of habitat destruction. So this is something that our native species have recognized as a source of food. So that really kind of keeps it in check. Like rabbits, a lot of animals do actually recognize this and eat the flowers before they even have a chance to seed. We can eat the flowers. We can eat the entire plant. So these are great. A closer look at the flower. I mean, a beautiful striking yellow. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and that puffed seed head. And so this is very common in a lot of asters, where you see that they have these hairs called pappus hairs, and that's usually for wind distribution, right? So for seed dispersal via wind currents. So it'll make them more aerodynamic, and they'll be able to spread. So you see this with like burdock seeds and dandelion seeds, as well as even smaller like wood asters, things like that. You see them go to seed and look very fuzzy. And then the foliage. So there's different species that have been introduced. You see more commonly a lot of red dandelion here, but they're absolutely, but they still are a yellow flower. But they have like the veining gets this reddish color to them, and they grow in this rosette type of growth pattern, pretty close to the ground. And I love that they're becoming much more available in shops. I've been seeing them being sold in green markets and things as a green. I love making pesto out of dandelion. Yes, they're great. And
I have
again,
some in the refrigerator right now.
That's perfect. So they are bitter. So
yes, I was going to mention that. I love the bitters.
Exactly. I love bitter. I love sour. I love bitter. But some folks aren't fans of that. So again, I always warn people if something is bitter, because I've made that mistake too, where I've worked with a new plant and then I didn't realize how bitter or acrid it might be. Like it was a few years ago, my husband and I were working with sanctuary for the first time, and I decided, I'll just make an infusion, and I didn't even think about it, and that was horrendous. That was absolutely that was one of the worst. And then I learned it's better as a tincture. Don't do that. I learned the hard way. We definitely learned the hard way. So I always try to give everybody a little disclaimer when things have very strong tastes, just to give them a little bit of that warning. But they can occur like in these clusters. You might see them on lawns, but it's very rare that you would see them completely overtake a lawn. And if they do, it's usually on purpose. So it's usually that folks have purposely wanted to propagate that and have that. But they don't spread at a rate as other invasive species do. And as I mentioned, they have been recognized as a source of food. So it definitely keeps the population in check. And then all the parts can be used. What I found was really great is that you can actually they secrete like a latex. If you were to rip open the stem, has like a milky substance in there. And that sap is actually used traditionally like for insect bites, bee stings, things like that, to help with the inflammation and the itching. So super, super wonderful. So I definitely wanted to make sure to share that. And they also are used. They're great in terms of prebiotics and probiotics. So I get a lot of folks that are very confused by the idea of well, what's the difference, right, between a prebiotic and a
Probiotic.
and a probiotic. The word escaped me. So basically, the probiotic, while it's feeding this beneficial gut bacteria, right? The prebiotic is what basically sets the groundwork for it. So it tends to be like this, like a fibrous material that kind of creates scaffolding in your gut for the probiotic. I just realized I put prebiotic. Sorry about that. It's prebiotic and probiotic.
Yes.
So you can use them, so they work all around. So for gut health, really, really wonderful.
And what I love about your presentation is a number of times here I've had to go to Google and see what the definitions were. So I thought it was very interesting. The lithotriptic is dissolving of kidney and gallstones.
Yes.
That's
so
excellent.
Yes. And so I do. I have a free terminology sheet that I've been putting together for years. It's over 20 pages now. And I love to share it. It's a glossary of terms, and so I'm happy to share that. Just within the confines of the time, I was like, I wanted to pack enough info on the slide so folks can definitely explore more. But I want to, so. But yes, I understand. Yeah, but I understand that sometimes, right, these terms can kind of come at you, and you're like, "What's that?"
Well, I love that.
No, of course.
That's growth.
Yes, no, exactly. And so with the lithotriptic, so they're actually really used historically for gallstones, for kidney stones, to kind of help break down the mineralization.
So that means in the form of a tincture, it would help in that area?
Yes. So as an extract, like a tincture, for folks who are prone to kidney stones, drinking infusions of dandelion root, like even in water, as a kind of a preventative, very often, maybe once a day or so, is really, really helpful if you're prone to kidney stones. But right now, it's still very much used in combination. So a lot of doctors actually use an extract. So you're actually given medicine that's derived from the dandelion as a lithotriptic, and then they pair it with sonar. So they actually use vibration to break down these large clumps, if they can do it so that it's not invasive, so they're not going in and removing them.
So it doesn't hurt when it comes out.
And yes, and so it breaks them into more manageable pieces. And then with the lithotriptic, that helps break it down even more. So it's easier for you to pass them, so that they don't have to actually go in and remove them. So that's usually kind of like the first way of trying to, if it's something that could potentially be broken down. It's still very much used. And another great thing I love about these is their relationship with bile. And so they fall into the three categories in relation to bile regulation, right? So choleretics, cholagogues, and antibilious. And so basically they work with the body and either promote the flow of bile if it's deficient in your body, but they will also, if you're producing and having too much, like overproductive, an excess of bile, it actually will lower that or bring it up to where it should be. So it's really balances it. So I love that it's not like one or the other. It works with your body to get it to an optimal flow and production rate. So super, super neat. Really wonderful.
I wanted to interject too that if a person has chronic stones, they really need to take a look at their diet.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes. I've had kidney stones twice in my life. In my early 20s, I would not wish that on anyone. At that time, in my early 20s, during college, I lived on Coca-Cola. So,
That'll do it.
yep. And you think I would have learned the first time? And after the second time, I was like, yeah. So
I get it. Yeah.
yeah. So you have to, you definitely, diet has so much to do with it. So, but it can definitely help, and if you're prone to them, this could be a very good ally to have in your corner.
Absolutely.
And then the last one I wanted to talk about is plantain. Yes. So it has, somebody did mention plantain earlier. And plantain is wonderful. And this was also introduced. So it's believed to have been introduced during like the European settlement. So the seeds were in the treads of the shoes, and they were just kind of brought over. One of the common names is actually white man's foot. And so this was a name that was given by the indigenous because when they would see that areas would be clear cut for houses to be built, and now these new meadows would sprout these things. And so their belief was that they were arising everywhere the settler put their foot down. So that was how the white man's foot became one of the common names. But yeah, quite a few things, and it was used traditionally as well for snake bites, and believed to also ward off snakes, which doesn't not necessarily proven, but it was believed to do that. And it was also commonly used as a Band-Aid. So before Band-Aids were a thing, this is something that would be used as a spit poultice, and even take another leaf and to hold it in place. Wow. This was very, very commonly used for small wounds and burns. And it was actually the inspiration for Band-Aids, the Johnson and Johnson brothers. Yeah, the Johnson brothers. Sorry, Jennifer.
My teacher taught me that we always would wear it in our shoes, and I like the connotation there, the white man's foot, but it's also for tired feet. We just put it inside when we went hiking in our feet, and I think it has an effect that way. And plus, we can absorb it through the skin as your feet get sweaty, and so it and it was just, I don't know, it's kind of fun to think of wearing taking a plant on a walk with you and then absorbing it. So I wanted to share that. It was a nice.
Yeah. I've never heard of that. That's so neat. I have heard of using burdock leaves that way. So using them, that they were used like in the soles of like moccasins. They were used, for to put as a cushion even in the winter as well, when it started to get colder.
Well, I need some of that today then.
And I have heard of also burdock being used, letting it sit in vinegar overnight and then applied to the soles of feet for folks with like inflammation, rheumatism, things like that. So I've seen a couple of things of burdock leaves being used like that, and being like kind of put in your shoe. But I hadn't heard of plantain, so that's pretty neat. I'm gonna try that.
Yeah.
And so with the common names, again, some really interesting ones that might jump out at you. But these are really awesome in that in terms of identification. So they get these parallel veins that are they rise off of the leaf. So there's something that you can even just be able to. It's very tactile. You can feel it. It's really, really great. And what you're going to want to do is really get that the inside, the mucilage, and you're going to want to really break it up and get all that juice kind of going to really access the medicinal properties. And these can be eaten just like that. They actually, there have been studies that these have a higher, in terms of per plant, these have a higher vitamin content, like nutritional content, than kale.
That's
Yeah,
something.
yeah, it's like a couple percent. It's like a little bit over, but it's over. So, and you can actually prepare these like kale chips. You can actually, especially with the
delicious.
Yes. So you can, there's recipes online to make plantain chips. And so I do get a lot of folks go like plantain, like plátano, like the banana. And it's
Yes.
unfortunately the crossover of those names can get very confusing. So, but this isn't a banana. And the two species that we tend to see are Plantago major, and I just realized I have a typo in there. Sorry about that. Is Plantago lanceolata, and that's the narrow leaf plantain. And so you might see ones that have very kind of also called buckhorn plantain. So very kind of wide, round leaves, and then you have these that are just really long and narrow, very like sword like. So here's a close up of the flowers, and I really find their flowers, right? They're beautiful, and I love that they actually will bloom at different times. So it's usually the bottom is what blooms first, and then the top is still closed, and then as the bottom ones start to die off, the next kind of section starts to emerge, and they're quite beautiful. And the seeds themselves are actually very tasty. They taste kind of like almonds, and they're very high in protein, and you can eat them. A lot of folks use them like a trail snack if they're in season and the seeds are available. You can have them. And what was really great is my last trip. My mother is from Costa Rica, and last time in 2019, my husband and I were visiting, and I was trying to get to learn more about how I work with these invasive species. So plantain is there, and it's not native. It was introduced from Europe, and what was really interesting was that they apparently use. I know the plant itself is rich in mucilage, but the seeds as well, and they actually use the seeds to cool the stomach, as they explained. And so for indigestion, heartburn, that they typically consume the seeds that way, or they make an infusion of the seeds to use in that way. So I thought that was really interesting. And here's just an example again. So the rounder leaves is the Plantago major, so the broadleaf plantain. And then this one that you see with all these, all the leaf litter is Plantago lanceolata. And so that has much longer, narrower type of leaves. But both
very
of them
artsy.
have very, but they have very risen veins. So really wonderful plant. And they can also, like dandelions, grow in some clusters, but they don't get to that severe type of thing like lesser celandine or mugwort, where they will like completely cover an area. So, and these really, they like full sun. So they tend to grow on lawns or along like trails, along streets, things like that. They love like the hedge, the hedge area. And great medicinal. You can eat it raw. You can use it in a tea, in an infusion. Tincture is great. I use it again, as I mentioned earlier, with my tooth extraction. Wonderful. And infused oil as well is great for for rashes, if you're prone to like eczema. Really great. And you can also make a suckets, so a juice out of them. So you just kind of put them in a juicer. So you can use them that way as well. Some people add them to their green drinks and things like that, their smoothies, and it's something that you can definitely do as well. They're really amazing for the healing process, especially. So a lot of things. So you can see why they were traditionally used as like a Band-Aid. So anything from being, astringent, so for like infected, weepy type. So it's right to really kind of suck up those tissues, tonify those tissues. It was an antiseptic. It helped with calm the bleeding, promote cellular growth. So you see why it was so valued and still valued today as a medicinal. It's literally it's growing on people's lawns, and and it's so inconspicuous. Folks don't even realize this amazing thing. And so I wanted to wrap up with just what can we do. So we talked about some ways you can kind of get boots on the ground, and kind of go out and work with the land, or maybe even, get some training so you can at least spread the word if you can't physically go. But I think as a practitioner, right? So let's say you're not in a position to go out right now, to do some field work. You're not in a position to take on more schooling or educational training, to do this type of thing. But you're a practitioner, right? You're using the herbs yourself. Maybe you're working with clients. So I think these are the biggest takeaways. I would hope that you would take away. Is if you're going to use a plant, I think that you should definitely know the plant. Don't just know what the plant can do, but how does the plant grow? Where does it grow? How do you know how the person that you're purchasing it from, how are they sourcing it, right? These are really important things to know. Some people just go, oh, well, it's organic. And so that's basically as far as they might go up the rabbit, into the rabbit hole is just, they just want to make sure it's organic. So yeah, okay, sure, it's organic, but where is it coming from? I did put together a book list that I'm happy to share. I have a link to the Dropbox. I can put it in the chat in a second, but I can also give it to you, Carolyn, to send out to everyone.
Email it to me and I'll send it out.
Oh, perfect. So that, there's different books like The Business of Botanicals. There's great books that kind of tell you a little bit more about that supply chain. So, because you really need to understand sourcing and supply chain and the supply chain. And so, while the supply chain there could be 7 stops that plant is going to make, that material is going to make before it gets to that shelf that you purchase it from. So kind of understanding that it's not, it gets picked, it gets packaged, and it ends up in your store. Sometimes these are packaged, they're shipped cross-continentally, to completely different places where they're put in warehouses. Sometimes you don't know how long they're sitting in those warehouses or the conditions of those warehouses. Sometimes they're adulterated, so they're mixed with other things as fillers. So you're not getting pure product. Sometimes the quality is really bad. Sometimes they're purchased from these harvesters that are going out and wild harvesting and decimating native stands. So you just really try to really think about where you're getting your herbs. If you're not growing them yourself or getting them from like a community garden or something like that, or locally, just really try to really kind of go in there, deep dive in there. Because that's really important information. If you want to be working with these herbs, I think this is a very big piece of that. And then, and that has to do also with foraging as well. So make sure, your proper foraging etiquette. Don't take the entire thing, leave plant behind. And definitely, be more responsible. And as I said earlier too, don't underestimate your impact. You might think that, oh, this is a little thing, or I'm just doing this one little thing. I'm grabbing this one little plant. But you don't know there's so many other people behind you that might be having that same exact thought. And collectively, it's much more detrimental. So it's much, don't underestimate how you can impact negatively and how you can impact positively. So I think sometimes folks think, well, I can't do much, I can't be out there. But even just sharing the information, even just letting people know, like, hey, did you know this fun fact? Or or telling your neighbor, hey, you shouldn't be planting that multi-floor rose. That's going to be really, really bad for your yard. Even just kind of chiming in and in these types of ways, and helping others make better decisions is gonna hopefully, change the way things are going. And lastly, just, putting in there how to reach me, my email, my Instagram, and my website. I hope this was enjoyable. I tried to pack in as much information as possible. So I hope it was informative. Yeah. So there was a few that I threw in there. So hopefully you liked it.
I loved it. You know, we loved it.
We loved it. It was great.
Wonderful.
Ah,
Thank
and I'm
you.
glad I can own it so I can go back and hear the parts I missed. So
Yes,
I've had a busy household this morning, and
yes.
no, I've said, so I'm just thanking Jocelyn
Oh, yes.
and you for bringing this wonderful presentation, and I look forward to the fact that I'll have it later to be able
Oh,
to,
yes.
for the
Yeah, I
missing
can't wait
part.
to look at it again.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much, Jocelyn, for coming, and thank all of you for coming out with us on and listening to this wonderful presentation. It's the Healing Project Wellness Series, and this is part 1 of Ecological Herbalism. Next month, it will be Ecological Herbalism Part 2 with Satimos Holistic Health in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And look forward to seeing you all there. Yeah, we'll meet Jenaline Joseph for that segment. And I always like to remind everyone that life is all about change, and we certainly have elevated our knowledge today with Jocelyn, and we look forward to more from the Herban Garden. Hope you'll come back and visit us at some point in the future, Jocelyn.
Definitely.
And I want to thank all of you for coming. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Thais. And thank you, Glenda. Look forward to seeing all of you next month. Love you much, and stay safe and healthy.
Have a great one. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.